I am Elias. I have stood in the dust of forgotten places and listened to the wind carry stories that have no words. I have traced the lines on ancient stones and felt the echoes of prayers said in languages that are no longer spoken. But of all the mysteries I have pursued, one remains the most profound, the most unsettling, the most divine. It is not a mystery of stone or text, but of the human heart, broken open on a hill of skulls. It is the mystery of a single, ragged breath, drawn in agony and exhaled as a word that should not have been possible. Forgiveness. We say the word easily. We ask for it. We offer it. We wrestle with it in the quiet of our own failings. But to truly understand the word as he spoke it, we must travel back into a world that had no place for it. A world of iron and blood and honor. We must stand in the shadow of the cross and listen, not with our ears, but with our souls. We must feel the splinters in the wood, the dust in our throats, the chilling finality of a world built on the simple, brutal logic of the sword. The Roman world was a world of order, an order bought with violence and maintained with the constant threat of it. Power was not an idea. It was a physical presence. It was the legionary's hobnailed sandal on the stone-paved road. It was the eagle standard, the Aquila, that glinted in the unforgiving Judean sun, a promise of Rome's unblinking gaze. It was the sound of marching, 1,000 men moving as one, a sound that crushed dissent before it could become a thought. In this world, honor was everything. It was a man's public worth, his reputation, his very identity, and honor was a fragile thing, easily stained. An insult, a slight, a betrayal, these were not mere offenses. They were debts, and they had to be paid. The currency of this payment was shame, and its final expression was vengeance. To be wronged and not to seek retribution was to be less than a man. It was to accept humiliation, to be seen as weak, contemptible. The logic was simple as a spear thrust. An eye for an eye was not just a law, it was the fundamental physics of their society. It was how the world was kept in balance. Power answered insult with force. Strength answered weakness with disdain. This was the bedrock of civilization. From the marbled halls of the Senate in Rome to the dusty garrison towns on the frayed edges of the empire. And Judea was one of those edges, a land of fierce pride and simmering resentment, a land that had its own ancient and profound understanding of justice and mercy. The Jewish tradition, the soil from which Jesus grew, was rich with the concept of forgiveness. It was a dialogue between God and his people. The Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, was the most sacred day of the year, a day of fasting and prayer, a day when the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies to seek God's forgiveness for the sins of the entire nation. It was a beautiful and powerful ritual of restoration. But this forgiveness, both divine and human, was almost always conditional. It was part of a covenant, a two-sided agreement. Forgiveness required repentance. The sinner had to acknowledge their wrong, to turn back to God, to make restitution if possible. Forgiveness was the final step in a process of repair. To forgive someone who did not ask for it, who did not repent, who gloried in their wrongdoing, was almost unthinkable. It would be a violation of justice, an invitation to chaos. It was into this world, a world of Roman honor and Jewish covenant, that Jesus of Nazareth came, speaking of a different kind of kingdom. He walked the dusty roads of Galilee, his feet bare. He spoke of a God who was not a distant, demanding king, but a father, an Abba, who ran to meet his prodigal son while he was still a long way off. He told stories that turned the world upside down. A Samaritan, a despised half-breed, was the hero. A Pharisee's prayer was less worthy than a tax collector's whisper. The first would be last, and the last would be first. But the most radical, the most dangerous of all his teachings, was what he said about enemies. In the Sermon on the Mount, with the green hills of Galilee around him and the blue sky as his cathedral, he did not just suggest a new ethic, he commanded a new reality. You have heard that it was said, "You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This was not a call for passive acceptance. It was a call to a radical, active, divine love. It was not about feeling affection for those who wished you harm. It was about willing their good, actively seeking their well-being, praying for their soul even as they sharpened the sword against you. Turn the other cheek was not a command to be a doormat. It was a gesture of profound and shocking defiance. In a culture of honor and shame, to be struck on the right cheek was the ultimate insult, a backhanded slap reserved for an inferior. To turn the other cheek was to deny the striker the power to shame you. It was to say, "Your violence has no power over my humanity. I will not be drawn into your cycle of hatred." This was the teaching. It was beautiful. It was impossible. And it would be tested in the most brutal way imaginable. The crucifixion was not just an execution. It was a piece of political theater, a carefully staged spectacle of Roman power. It was designed to inflict the maximum amount of pain, humiliation, and terror, not just on the victim, but on everyone who watched. It was a message, written in blood and agony, to a rebellious province. This is what happens when you challenge Rome. The process began long before the cross. It began with the scourging, the flagrum, a whip of leather thongs embedded with pieces of bone and metal, was designed to flay the skin from a man's back, to shred muscle, to induce shock and massive blood loss. It was a prelude to death, a way of breaking a man's body and spirit before the final ordeal. Then came the long walk through the city streets, carrying the heavy wooden crossbeam, the patibulum. It was a walk of shame, a parade of brokenness. The crowds would jeer, spit, and throw stones. It was part of the punishment, the stripping away of all dignity, all honor, all humanity. And finally, the hill, Golgotha, the place of the skull. The air there was thick with the stench of death and cheap wine, the sound of flies, the low moans of men dying slowly. The soldiers, bored and brutalized by their work, would throw the victim to the ground. The sound of the hammer striking the iron nail is a sound that, once heard, is never forgotten. A thick, square nail, driven through the wrist, not the palm, to sever the median nerve and anchor the body to the wood. The pain is a white-hot explosion, a universe of agony that blots out the sun. Then the other wrist, then the feet, one on top of the other, with a single, longer nail. And then, the raising of the cross. The body, now hanging by the nails, is dropped into a hole in the ground. The jolt dislocates the shoulders, the elbows, and the slow, agonizing process of death by asphyxiation begins. To breathe, the victim must push up on the nail in his feet, scraping his raw, bleeding back against the rough-hewn timber. Every breath is a fresh wave of agony. The muscles cramp, the lungs fill with fluid, the heart struggles to beat. This is the world from which the word was spoken. This is the moment. The man on the cross, his body a canvas of torture, his vision blurred with sweat and blood, looks down. He sees the soldiers, gambling for his clothes, their faces indifferent, just doing a job. He sees the crowd, their faces a mixture of hatred, fear, and morbid curiosity. He sees the religious leaders, their faces triumphant, nodding in satisfaction that this threat to their order has been eliminated. They are all his enemies. They are the ones who have done this to him. And he draws a breath, a shallow, ragged, impossibly painful breath, and he speaks, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." It is a whisper, perhaps, lost in the wind and the noise of the crowd, but it is a whisper that shatters the foundations of the old world. It is the most radical, the most incomprehensible, the most divine sentence ever uttered. Not, "I forgive them," but "Father, forgive them." He is not just offering his own pardon. He is interceding for them, standing in the gap between them and the divine justice they have so brutally violated. He is being their priest at the very moment they are making him their victim. And he gives a reason, "For they know not what they do." This is not an excuse. It is a diagnosis. It is the profound, heartbreaking truth of the human condition. They do not understand the nature of the man they are killing. They do not understand the nature of the God they are mocking. They are trapped in their own systems of power, of honor, of fear, of religion. They are blind. They are acting out of a profound and tragic ignorance. The forgiveness he offers is not a response to their repentance. It is a response to their brokenness. It is unconditional. It is preemptive. It is a gift offered not after the offense, but during it. This is what makes it so shocking. In a world where forgiveness was the end of a long process of reconciliation, he makes it the beginning. He does not wait for them to be sorry. He forgives them in their sin, in their hatred, in their violence. He absorbs the full force of their injustice and returns only love. This is a new kind of power. It is not the power of the sword, which can kill the body but cannot touch the soul. It is the power of a love so absolute that it can endure the worst that humanity can do and still seek humanity's good. It is a power that looks at the executioner and sees not a monster, but a lost child. The cross, which was meant to be a symbol of Roman power, is transformed into a symbol of divine love. The place of ultimate shame becomes the place of ultimate glory. The victim becomes the victor, not by defeating his enemies, but by forgiving them. Why is this so difficult? Why is forgiveness harder than justice? Justice is a human concept. It is about balance. It is about righting wrongs. It is about making sure that everyone gets what they deserve. We understand justice. It is written into our laws, into our sense of fairness. If someone takes from you, they must pay it back. If someone harms you, they must be punished. The scales must be balanced. Justice is a transaction. Forgiveness is a cancellation of the debt. It is the victim choosing to absorb the cost of the wrong that was done to them. It is to say, "You owe me something, an apology, restitution, your own suffering, but I am canceling the debt. I will not make you pay." This is an act that defies human logic. It feels unfair. It feels weak. It feels like letting the wrongdoer win. But the teaching of the cross is that true strength, true victory, lies not in balancing the scales, but in breaking them. Justice can bring an end to a conflict. It can imprison the guilty and compensate the victim, but it cannot heal the human heart. It cannot break the cycle of violence. Vengeance begets vengeance. Hatred begets hatred. Only forgiveness has the power to create something new. The early church was born in the shadow of this teaching. It was a community of people who had seen the impossible. They were hunted, persecuted, thrown to the lions, and yet their stories are filled with echoes of the cross. The martyr Stephen, as he is being stoned to death, falls to his knees and cries out, "Lord, do not hold this sin against them." He is reenacting the forgiveness of his master. He has understood that the Christian is called not just to believe in forgiveness, but to become a conduit of it. The church came to understand that forgiveness is not just a moral duty, it is a participation in the very life of God. It is the way that the love of God flows into the brokenness of the world. To forgive is to act in the image of God. It is to allow the grace that we have received to flow through us to others. This is the heart of the sacrament of reconciliation, of confession. It is not just about wiping the slate clean. It is about being reconnected to the source of all love and all forgiveness, so that we can then become sources of that love and forgiveness in our own lives. Forgiveness transforms the victim. To refuse to forgive is to remain chained to the person who wronged you. It is to allow their act of violence to define your present and your future. You replay the scene over and over. You are trapped in the prison of your own resentment. The bitterness corrodes your soul. It is a poison you drink, hoping the other person will die. To forgive is to break the chain. It is to reclaim your own heart. It is to say, "What you did to me will no longer have power over me. I release you, not for your sake, but for mine. I choose freedom." It is a painful, difficult, often lifelong process. It is not a single event, but a journey. It is a choice that must be made again and again, every morning, every time the memory rises. But it is the path to healing, and forgiveness has the power to transform the oppressor. Not always, not immediately, but the offer of unconditional love, the refusal to meet hatred with hatred, is the one thing that has the power to break through the armor of a hardened heart. The story of the centurion at the foot of the cross is a testament to this. He is a professional killer, a man of Rome, a man of power. He has seen countless men die, but he sees something in the death of this man that he has never seen before. He sees the way he dies. He hears the word of forgiveness, and he is shattered. "Truly," he says, "this man was the Son of God. The victim's love has conquered the victor's sword." What does this mean for us? Now, we live in a world that is still torn apart by violence, by hatred, by the desire for revenge. We see it in our wars, in our politics, in our own communities, in our own hearts. We carry our own wounds, our own resentments, our own unforgiveness. The teaching of the cross is as radical and as necessary today as it was 2,000 years ago. It calls us to a different way of being. It challenges us to believe that love is stronger than hate, that mercy is more powerful than vengeance, that the future does not have to be a repetition of the past. It asks us to look at our enemies, whether they are on a battlefield or across the dinner table, and to see in them not a monster, but a broken human being, acting out of their own fear, their own pain, their own ignorance. It asks us to pray for them, to will their good, to refuse to be consumed by the same darkness that consumes them. This is the hardest teaching. It is the narrow gate. It is the path that few will find. But it is the only path that leads to life. It is the only way to break the cycles of violence that have plagued humanity since the beginning of time. The mystery of the cross is not the mystery of suffering. It is the mystery of love. A love so vast, so unconditional, so divine, that it can absorb all the darkness of the world and transform it into light. A love that can look upon its own murderers and say, with its last ragged breath, "Father, forgive them." To stand in the shadow of that love is to be changed forever. It is to understand that we are all the soldier. We are all the crowd. We are all the one who needs forgiveness. And it is to understand that we are all called to be the one who forgives. This is the heart of the faith. This is the revolution of the soul. It is the echo of a single word, spoken from a place of ultimate pain, that continues to reverberate through the centuries. healing the world one broken heart at a time. I am Elias, and I have seen that the deepest truth is not written in stone, but in the scars of a love that refused to die. The final breath on the cross was not an ending. It was the beginning of everything. It was the sound of a new world being born. A world where the final word is not death, but mercy. A world where the only true power is the power to forgive. And in that power, we find our own freedom, our own healing, and our own hope. The light that shines from that dark hill is a light that can never be extinguished. It is the light of a love that has conquered death itself. And it calls to us, across the ages, to come out of our own tombs of resentment and fear, and to walk in the impossible, beautiful, life-giving light of forgiveness. The journey to that hill is a journey into the heart of our own contradictions. We build monuments to justice, but we nurse our grievances in the dark. We speak of peace, but our world is forged in the crucible of war. The story of this forgiveness is not a gentle parable. It is a violent collision between two opposing forces. The relentless, cyclical logic of human retribution, and a divine love that shatters that logic completely. To understand it, we must feel the grit of the world he lived in, a world where survival was a daily struggle and mercy was a luxury few could afford. The sun in Judea is not gentle. It is a hammer. It beats down on the parched earth, on the whitewashed villages, on the faces of the people. It bleaches the color from the landscape, leaving only the stark contrast of light and shadow. This was a land of harsh realities, a place where life was lived close to the bone. They paid their taxes to Caesar. They saw the Roman patrols on their roads. They felt the constant, low-grade humiliation of being a conquered people. Their faith was their fortress, a deep and ancient well of identity and hope in a world that sought to crush them. They waited for a Messiah, a promised one who would come and set things right, but they expected a warrior king, a new David who would break the Roman yoke and restore the glory of Israel. They expected a hero who would lead them in a great and final battle for justice. They did not expect a man who would speak of loving the very soldiers who oppressed them. They did not expect a king whose crown would be made of thorns. The Roman soldier was the embodiment of the system. He was trained to be efficient, to be brutal, to suppress his own humanity in the service of the state. He was a cog in a vast machine of power. When he stood before a crowd of conquered people, his face was a mask of indifference. He was not there to understand them. He was there to control them. His tools were the spear, the sword, and fear. The cross was his ultimate tool. It was not an invention of the Romans, but they perfected it. They turned it into a science of agony. They knew precisely how long a man could survive, how to maximize his pain, how to turn his death into a public spectacle that would serve as a warning to all who watched. This was the world that Jesus entered, and he brought with him a message that was like a fire in a field of dry grass. He spoke of a kingdom that was not of this world, a kingdom whose values were the inverse of Rome's. In his kingdom, the poor were blessed, the meek inherited the earth, and the peacemakers were called the children of God. He healed the sick. He ate with outcasts. He touched the untouchable. He offered a vision of a world where human worth was not determined by power or wealth or social status, but by the simple fact of being a beloved child of God. This was more than just a spiritual teaching. It was a political earthquake. It was a direct challenge to the foundations of Roman power and the religious establishment. If the poor and the weak were the blessed ones, then the rich and the powerful were in a perilous position. If God's love was available to everyone, freely and without condition, then the gatekeepers of religion lost their power. It was inevitable that these two worlds, The world of Caesar and the world of Christ would collide, and the point of collision was the cross. The trial of Jesus was a legal farce, a rushed and chaotic affair driven by political expediency and religious jealousy. The Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, a man who understood power but not truth, washed his hands of the matter, surrendering the Nazarene to the mob. The religious leaders, who feared his influence with the people, saw him as a blasphemer who threatened their authority. The crowd, whipped into a frenzy, called for his crucifixion. Everyone was acting out of their own fear, their own self-interest, their own blindness. They were all caught in the machinery of a world that knew how to do only one thing to a man like Jesus: kill him. The journey to Golgotha was the final, brutal, stripping away of everything. He was stripped of his clothes, of his friends, of his dignity. He was reduced to a piece of suffering flesh, a spectacle of shame. The cross was not just a physical burden. It was the weight of all the world's hatred, all its violence, all its fear, pressed down upon the shoulders of one man. And yet, it was in this moment of ultimate weakness, of ultimate degradation, that he revealed a power that the world had never seen before. The power to absorb all of that hatred and not return it. The power to look upon the faces of his tormentors and see not monsters, but lost souls. The power to pray for their forgiveness. This prayer from the cross is the heart of the Christian mystery. It is the key that unlocks everything. It tells us that God's response to human evil is not retribution, but redemptive love. He does not meet our violence with greater violence. He meets it with a love that is willing to suffer and die, a love that refuses to be defeated by the darkness. This is a love that is almost impossible for us to comprehend. Our instincts cry out for justice, for revenge. We want to see the wicked punished. We want the scales to be balanced. The idea of forgiving the unrepentant, of loving the enemy, goes against every fiber of our being. It feels like a betrayal of the self, a surrender to evil. But the cross teaches us a different truth. It teaches us that the only way to conquer evil is to refuse to become it. The only way to break the cycle of violence is to absorb it and transform it into love. This is not weakness. It is the ultimate strength. It is the power that created the universe, the power that can raise the dead. The Church, in its best moments, has been a testament to this power. The stories of the martyrs are not stories of defeat. They are stories of victory, the victory of a love that could not be extinguished by fire or sword. The story of the Church is the story of ordinary, flawed human beings attempting to live out this impossible teaching. It is a story filled with failure and betrayal, with its own sins and its own violence. The Church has often forgotten the message of the cross, seeking power and wealth, aligning itself with the empires of this world. But the whisper from Golgotha has never been completely silenced. It has echoed down through the centuries in the lives of the saints, in the work of the peacemakers, in the quiet, hidden acts of mercy and forgiveness that have held our broken world together. It is the voice of a mother forgiving the man who murdered her son. It is the voice of a nation seeking reconciliation after a brutal civil war. It is the voice in our own hearts that calls us to let go of our own bitterness, our own desire for revenge. To forgive is the most difficult work in the world. It requires a kind of death, a death to our own pride, our own sense of justice, our own right to be angry. It is a crucifixion of the ego, but it is also the only path to resurrection. It is the only way to be set free from the past. As long as we are defined by our wounds, we are not free. We are prisoners of the people who hurt us. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the prison door. It is a declaration of independence. It is the soul's refusal to be a victim. The forgiveness spoken from the cross was not just for the soldiers who drove the nails, it was for all of us. It was for every act of cruelty, every betrayal, every failure of love, in every human heart, in every generation. It was a universal amnesty, a declaration that the debt of sin has been canceled. Our part is simply to accept it. And to accept it means to be willing to extend it to others. We cannot receive a gift that we are unwilling to give. We cannot ask God to forgive our debts if we are not willing to forgive our debtors. This is the terrible and beautiful symmetry of the gospel. The cross is a mirror. It shows us the depths of human sin, the terrible violence of which we are capable. But it also shows us the height of divine love, the incredible mercy of a God who is willing to die for his enemies. To look at the cross is to see ourselves in all our brokenness, and it is to see God in all his love. The final hours on the cross were a descent into the deepest darkness. The sky grew black. The earth shook. The man on the cross cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This was not a cry of unbelief. It was a cry of solidarity. He was entering into the deepest human experience of desolation, the feeling of being utterly alone, abandoned by God and man. He was drinking the cup of our suffering to its dregs. And it was from this place of ultimate darkness that the final victory was won. His last words were not a cry of despair, but a cry of trust. "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." He had finished the work. He had lived out his teaching to the very end. He had shown the world a love that was stronger than death. The story does not end in the tomb. It ends with an empty tomb, with the astonishing, world-changing news that he is risen. The resurrection is God's vindication of the cross. It is the proof that the way of forgiving love is not a path to defeat, but a path to life, to a life that death cannot touch. The risen Christ does not appear to his disciples with words of condemnation for their cowardice and betrayal. He appears to them with words of peace. He shows them his wounds, not as accusations, but as trophies of his love. And he breathes on them, giving them the power to continue his work of reconciliation. Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. The mission of the church, the mission of every Christian, is to be a minister of this forgiveness. It is to be a sign of hope in a world of despair, a source of healing in a world of hurt, a beacon of love in a world of hate. I am Elias, and I have learned that the path to God is not a ladder of spiritual achievement, but a downward journey into the messy, painful, beautiful reality of our shared humanity. It is the path of the cross. It is the path of forgiveness. It is the willingness to have our hearts broken open so that the love of God can flow through us to a world that is dying for a single drop of it. The sound I hear on the wind is not a sound of sorrow. It is the sound of a love that will not let us go, a love that has conquered the grave, a love that calls us, each of us, by name, to come out of the darkness and into the marvelous, terrifying, glorious light of forgiveness. The journey is long, the path is hard, but it is the only journey that matters. It is the journey home. Let us linger for a moment longer in that world of stone and sun, to truly grasp the chasm that Jesus' words had to cross. Imagine the city of Jerusalem on a festival day. The streets are a torrent of humanity, a crush of bodies smelling of dust, sweat, and spices. The air is thick with the bleating of sacrificial lambs and the lowing of oxen. You hear a dozen languages, a babel of dialects from across the diaspora, from Alexandria, from Babylon, from Rome itself. And over it all, the ever-present sound of Roman authority, the rhythmic tramp of a legionary patrol on the stone pavement of the Antonia fortress, their armor creaking, their shields glinting. The sharp command of a centurion, a voice accustomed to instant obedience. This is a city under occupation, and the peace is a fragile, brittle thing. Justice, in this context, is swift and visible. A thief, caught in the market, is not given a trial in a quiet courtroom. He is flogged on the spot. His cries a public lesson. A rebel is not imprisoned. He is crucified outside the city walls, his decaying body a billboard for Roman power. Everything is about honor and shame, strength and weakness. To be powerful is to be able to inflict your will upon others. To be weak is to be the recipient of that will. There is no middle ground. Now, consider the Jewish understanding of forgiveness in this same city. It is a deeply serious theological concept, woven into the fabric of daily life and the calendar of sacred feasts. Sin is not merely a personal failing, it is a rupture in the fabric of the community and a violation of the covenant with God. Therefore, forgiveness is a communal act of restoration. When a person sinned, they brought a sacrifice to the temple. The shedding of the animal's blood was a physical, tangible sign of the cost of sin, a recognition that a life had been forfeit. The sinner would place their hands on the head of the animal, symbolically transferring their guilt. It was a powerful, visceral ritual that acknowledged the gravity of the offense. Repentance, or teshuvah, was the essential prerequisite. It means to turn or to return. It is a conscious act of turning away from the sin and turning back towards God and the community. It involves acknowledging the wrong, feeling remorse, and committing to change one's behavior. Without this turning, forgiveness was impossible. God was merciful, yes, but he was also just. The covenant had terms. To forgive a person who remained in their sin, who refused to turn back, would be to make a mockery of the covenant itself. It would be to say that sin has no consequences. This is the world Jesus stood in. A world where Roman justice was brutal and public, and where Jewish forgiveness was sacred and conditional. And he proposed a third way, a way that was utterly alien to both. When he said, "Father, forgive them," he was not just offering a personal pardon. He was tearing up the very contracts that governed both the Roman and the Jewish worlds. He was bypassing the Roman system of retributive justice and the Jewish system of conditional repentance. He was introducing a new economy, the economy of grace. Grace is a gift that is not earned. It is love given to the undeserving. It is mercy that triumphs over judgment. From the cross, Jesus was not just forgiving the specific individuals who were there. He was inaugurating a new age, an age of grace, where the love of God is poured out not because we are good, but because He is good. He was taking the full weight of human sin, the full violence of our broken systems, into His own body, and absorbing it, metabolizing it, and transforming it into love. The physical reality of this act is almost too much to bear. The human body is not designed to hang by its arms for hours. The dislocation of the shoulders, the constant, searing pain from the nerves in the wrists and feet, the slow, creeping paralysis of the diaphragm. The body screams for relief, for an end. The mind, starved of oxygen, drifts into delirium. Every instinct, every nerve ending, every cell cries out for one thing: survival, for vengeance, for an end to the pain. To choose, in that extremity, not to curse, not to hate, but to love, to forgive, to intercede, is an act that is not entirely of this world. It is a glimpse into the heart of God Himself. It is the ultimate revelation. The early Christian writers, the church fathers, wrestled with the meaning of this moment for centuries. They saw in it the fulfillment of the prophecies of the suffering servant in Isaiah, the one who was pierced for our transgressions and crushed for our iniquities. They understood that the cross was not a tragic accident, but a divine plan, a rescue mission into the heart of human darkness. St. Augustine wrote of the happy fault, the sin of Adam that had gained for us so great a Redeemer. He saw that it was precisely in our brokenness that God chose to meet us. The cross was not God's anger at sin. It was God's answer to sin, and the answer was love. This changes everything. It means that our worth is not based on our performance, on our ability to be good. Our worth is based on the fact that we are loved by God, loved with a love that was willing to go to the cross. This is the source of true freedom. We are no longer slaves to our own failures or to the judgment of others. We are free to be who we are, beloved children of God, and we are free to love others with that same freedom. The call to forgive our enemies is not a call to be weak. It is a call to be strong in a new way. It is the strength to resist the poison of bitterness. It is the strength to see the humanity in those who have hurt us. It is the strength to believe in the possibility of redemption for them and for ourselves. This is a strength that does not come from us. It is a gift of the Holy Spirit, the same Spirit that Jesus breathed on his disciples in the upper room. It is the Spirit that empowers us to do what we cannot do on our own, to love as he loved. I am Elias, and my journey has taught me this. The world is full of noise, the noise of anger, of fear, of accusation. But if you listen carefully, beneath all that noise, you can hear another sound. It is a quiet sound, a persistent sound. It is the sound of a heartbeat, the heartbeat of a God who has never stopped loving his creation. It is the sound of a whisper from a blood-stained cross, a whisper that has the power to heal nations, to mend broken hearts, and to roll the stone away from the tomb of our own unforgiveness. It is the sound of our true name being called, and the name is forgiven.